So comedy and time travel, it's interesting, as alluded to earlier, there's kind of the fish out of water scenario. There's the opportunity for someone to be completely displaced and also for things to be surprising and weird. I mean, what to anyone like to kick off, are the great opportunities of comedy and time travel?
Well, I think there's a natural affinity between comedy and science fiction because they're both about looking at the world from a peculiar angle, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think they knit together a lot better than people actually think. They're sort of on the same line. So that's, I don't know why there's not more of it. Maybe there is. Maybe there's loads of stuff like Daniel's.
Because it's really hard to do, Rob. That's why there's not more. It's really hard to do.
It's so funny, that shot when they look and everyone is just staring at them. Because you kind of think, this is going to happen in a minute. Here it is. And it's kind of the moment you're looking forward to. But they're suddenly exposed. And it's all about the strange and strange. And it's funny, because it's science fiction,
Yeah.
You were talking about Back to the Future, and I'm a big fan. I think that's a perfect screenplay. And it used to be touted in Hollywood as a perfect example of a screenplay. And it came across Spielberg's desk, and he said, "Why has nobody made this?" Actually, he let Zemeckis direct it. It was sort of a showpiece.
But like you said, I think there's a fear to it, and it takes. Yeah, you kind of have to be bold with it, and if you're kind of like breaking the mold, because it is easier and cheaper to film a flat share. So why would you take a risk on this other thing that people find quite niche? But if you put great characters into things, all it does is you can just expand the world, and you can take people to places that they've never been before. And I think that's why people should do it more. But I think a lot of it comes down to fear.
Yeah, there's something very exciting, I think, for audiences in time travel, the possibilities of changing things and experiencing new things. But obviously in Back to the Future and what, they talk about the alternate timelines and changing things. And obviously in your show, there's a kind of warning, don't sleep with someone, don't get someone pregnant, all the kind of stuff that ends up changing the future. That in itself is quite comedic, I think. And it's great to see, I think, both your shows kind of play with that idea.
I just love that image of from Back to the Future where he starts to interfere with the timeline and he starts to disappear, and you use that in the first episode of the second series. It's just that idea to get your head around, No, I mean it's not obvious that's what's going to happen, but it's just it's a wonderful thing to get your head around. If I go back and stop my dad marrying my mum, then I'm not here, am I? Yeah. So it's just a really quick, some ginger white freak turning up instead.
That is a bit of a spoiler, but that is a cracking episode, by the way. It's such a good episode. Yeah, very, very funny.
Thank you. It's actually one of the few that are on Prime. I was looking forward to seeing it when I got home.
I spoiled it for you, you silly sod.
I know exactly what's happening in every bloody beat now.
There's a lot more that goes on in it than just that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
If you could do more time travel episodes, what kind of time play would you do?
Well, I still just a couple of years ago finished the Quanderhorn experimentations, and the whole sort of second series is them all split off into different time zones, Roman era and prehistoric times and Witchfinder times. It's always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah.
The future would be difficult. That's a big to write that, man.
Yes.
What fun!
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it would have worked is another question, but that's what I wanted to do. There was some fun ideas, and we didn't go too far out there because let's not forget it's still like a British comedy budget. So as much as I say being adventurous,
but a great opportunity for a very different kind of satire than
That's the point. The motor of the first two series you lose because it's them in a time that we know. You've now got to create the background and put them into it, which is quite difficult.
It was, and I think that would have been like the challenge, but also would have been quite fun as well, because you are creating the politics of the future, do you know what I mean? And I think, basically what you're saying is that, the 20s was exotic, 50s, actually, you're the enemy because we're poor. So what does that mean for the future?
The Jetsons.
No, it's Elon. It's Elon Musk. We'll all be sitting at home doing nothing.
Way too young to know what the
I used
Jetsons
to
are.
love the Jetsons. Anyone else love the Jetsons, the cartoon? Yeah, see, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
This is a time travel crowd. They know the Jetsons. But what was the future going to be? Did you get any further on that? What was it going to be like?
No, I wrote a whole episode.
Oh.
Yeah, I did. I wrote a whole episode, and it was. What was it about? I'm trying to remember. It was
The future.
Yeah. God, do you know what? You're asking big questions.
So how far into the future did you go?
It wasn't too far, actually.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I think it was only about 15 or 20 years. So it wasn't flying cars and stuff. It was just, and the reason why I picked 15, 20 years, because there was just enough technology to kind of amp things up, but still be within a budget. And I think it was also about them meeting versions of themselves as well. Ooh. So that was kind of where that was the realm it was kind of sitting in.
I think you'd have broken your brain doing 6 episodes of that.
Do you know what? I would have, but I was up for the challenge.
You like it when it's hard, don't you? As a writer, it makes it more fun. I don't know why. We torture ourselves. I don't know why.
And I suppose part of the joy as well is what you guys were saying earlier is you do something and then you kind of go all the way there, and someone kind of says to you, actually, no, you can only have 1. And it actually means 3. Do you know what I mean? And I think it would have been a similar thing with this where, because even when I was doing the first series of Timewasters, I was playing with their whole time travel convention so much more, but what I was saying to you earlier was about reining it back and being a bit actually, never forget the characters. Yeah, you got this wonderful construct, but never forget your characters.
Yeah, you absolutely got that balance. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
As writers writing comedy, do you test out your material on other people? Do you sit there chuckling to yourself? How does it work?
I'm afraid I sit there chuckling to myself. That's how I do it. When I started out, I had a partner, and you try things with each other, so you get a handle on what people will laugh at. But yeah, no, really, literally, it's a great job. You sit in a room, you think of things, and laugh at yourself. What are you doing with your day?
I always think it's amazing that people do write comedy on their own. I mean, you've always written with a partner, and we both love Gordon and Simpson and Clement and Frene and so on. I just don't know how you sit in a room and write that down and even think, and certainly know that it's funny. Whereas if there's 2 of you, famously Richard Curtis and Ben Elton have the rule, and the 2 Ronnies have the same rule. If one of us doesn't laugh at it, it's out. Right. It doesn't go in. There's no discussion. Here's the joke. I don't get it. Out. And have that immediate sounding board, because it is a social activity. Laughing is a social activity. And doing it on your own room, I just got the greatest admiration for anybody who goes and sits on their own and does it, because I don't know how the hell you know.
You wouldn't have that admiration if you could see him working.
No.
He knows what we do.
The flip side of working with another person, though, is I don't know about you, but because I used to write with someone else as well, there's that lovely side in which I feel like sometimes it is actually, the comedy actually is better and it's quicker and it feels a bit tighter. But then the flip side is that you could be sitting there negotiating a name for half a day. It's why have I wasted half a day? Let's just call him Paul and move on. And so
I'm sorry, Dan. Names are important.
I know, but no.
We're going to sit here until we get it.
But it's driving you a bit insane. It's
names are really important. Seem like Paul. You're right. You're lucky. You just had a big family. You just chucked them around.
Yeah, I know. Well, now you know how I do it. I just go. I know someone.
I've done it both ways as well, and there is a compromise when you're writing with people. You can't always.
Rimmer is a real character, and was a teacher, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a contemporary student
who was very Rimmer.
He was an arsehole.
Yeah.
Did he ever get in touch with you?
He did. And now he was.
Yes, he did, didn't he?
He was a short kid. And he was a bully. So when we got into the sixth form, everybody became a prefect automatically. That's how they ran things at our school. And he used to give kids punishments and have them just set them an essay, and then when they bring it into the sixth form common room, we just rip it up in front of them. And such an arse. Anyway, so that earned him the honour of being Rimmer. And during the Gulf War, I got a letter from Kuwait, which shocked me, and it was from Rimmer.
Wow.
Who was an ace pilot by this
He
time.
was an ace pilot.
He was Ace Rimmer, wasn't he?
Oh my
He flew
God.
the royal family out of Kuwait. He was that big. And he actually was very generous and kind about it and said it was wonderful that he'd been memorialised.
Oh.
And Lister was you, obviously.
Yeah. Actually, there was a kid called Lister. He was a cool kid.
He was a cool kid. But the curry and the beers were you.
Yeah, Korean beers. Yeah, you were talking about another show,
Oh, Zombo.
Zomboat. Yeah, no, and Return of the Living Dead is a very funny horror film. So yeah, I think it's the same kind of relationship, really. Hitchcock, he's always on the brink of comedy when he's being terrifying. He treads this incredibly smooth, thin line. There's a very small distinction between horror and comedy.
Well, the mechanism of building up tension and then puncturing it either with a laugh or a scream,
That's true. Yeah.
the mechanism's very similar.
Like that lovely speech you do in that, and he said, "I just asked you for just ask you for a date." That's really funny. That's the whole build up and undercut. Yeah, no, I agree. Horror. I actually, with Andy Marshall, my current writing partner, wrote a pilot called Zomburbia, which is about trying to live with the zombies after the apocalypse, and they get into government and they
are in government.
They have to have equal rights, and it was a lot of fun.
But don't get Ed started on zombies because we will be here all.
Okay.
He is an absolute zombie freak.
No, big fan. Yeah, and I think you're right. And also, you remember things like, I don't know, like Carrie, when the hand comes out of the grave and grabs her, it's a huge scream, and then everybody immediately laughs. They scream and then laugh. It's so close.
Like
It's that
attention.
release of tension,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Tension
It's just
release,
that.
So, no, big fan of horror. And
I mean, who
comedy. And
doesn't remember that?
Didn't we? Polymorph and things.
Yeah,
Got a bit.
we got a bit horrible now and then.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I put in my contract that I play Nick, and I wrote.
Who's your agent?
It's a weird one. It helped. All my characters are black guy with glasses, so it does like limit the pool of how many people can play it. But also as well, like I think at the time I'd also had like other acting credits, so the channel kind of knew me and my commissioner knew me as well. So I think all of that kind of helped. So in that sense, so it's quite tricky. It depends on how many credits you have and what your agent's like. And
How did it work with the rest of the cast? Were they like you were the boss, so that they?
No, it was very much like, because on that show I wasn't a producer or anything, so I was just writer and creator. So even though I was there for
Just writer and creator.
It's quite a lot.
That's how writers are beaten into the ground. I know exactly what you mean then.
as in like I wasn't an exec, so I didn't have that kind of power, but I was there for the process in terms of like getting all the other actors involved.
What I would say to you as a producer, though, is if you think you are the very, very best person to perform that part, then go ahead and fight for it. But just really look in the mirror and ask yourself, look at all those other people out there, because as a writer, what you want is the show to be a hit. And to make the show a hit, what's Andy's rule? There's only two important things.
There's only two important things. The big picture and every tiny detail.
So don't cast yourself if you can honestly think of one person that would do it better, because try and get that person.
I would say, I would say Daniel's saying that he wasn't the producer. Did you get to produce later?
I became an associate on the second
Yeah,
series.
when I started out, you just didn't get listened to as a writer. And it's a very peculiar thing to do. But these guys let us be everywhere, perhaps because they didn't really understand the scripts anyway.
We had to have him.
But they actually let us have a lot of But even so, the crew would just smile and not do what you tell them, and you subtly go and find someone who would tell them.
Before we did Red Dwarf, we all worked together on a show called Carrot's Lip, which was a live show hosted by Jasper Carrot on a Saturday night, but had lots of sketches in it. So we got together a pool of, 7 or 8 writers, including you and Doug. We had to go to the BBC contracts and get them to completely create a new contract, because they said to us, well, we've never had a contract where writers are allowed in the room or allowed to be in rehearsals. So we had to do a minutage contract for them, and then an employment contract 5 days a week to be in the office. You got paid office attendance money, didn't you?
Wow.
And they they didn't like it at all, the contracts people. Hang on, you're paying them to come in. It's the last thing you want.
Paying writers.
Bloody writers in the room.
And the second part of the question was about perfecting things and travelling through time yourself.
Well,
Anyone want to take that one?
Swirly thing, I'd go back. I'll have his.
He's hurt.
Excellent.
Do you know, I don't know if it would be so much fun to do it now, because it's all kind of like you just sit there and do it, don't you? I mean, it was much more fun watching you sweat your bollocks off.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at a bucket and going, how the hell is this going to work?
Sorry.
So, Dan, I just very quickly just think regrets are pointless. So I don't think about, I'd go and do anything different. I'd enjoy what I did. And what a life. Laughing at myself in a room.
I was just going to say, like, in terms of, I would never change your bucket. I would never change your bucket. But I think it's the beauty of Red Dwarf it's the fact that you guys just jumped everywhere. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's because you focus more on the comedy. Do you know what I mean? And so when you're watching it back, and it's someone swirling water in a bucket. I mean, we didn't know, but now we do. But it's the comedy is so good, it meant that your world was even bigger. Do you know what I mean? Like, we stay in the 1920s, and I would never change that. But I was also very aware is that from a budget point of view, I couldn't be jumping through different time periods all the way through. So I suppose
I think
that's part of the joy of the bucket rather than CGI and money.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that affected the way we did Red Dwarf was we'd just come off the back of Young Ones. And Young Ones was important because for a starter, we'd broken the mold of 5 days and 1 day in the studio. We'd sold it as a variety show, so we got 2 days in the studios and a full 7-day week, and that was the only way it was possible. And we'd also just challenged the visual effects department. In fact, Peter Ragg, who became the boss man on Red Dwarf, and Ed and I both worked with him on Young Ones. And the possibilities, comedy never asked for that before. We didn't have to have lots of demands on costume. You just got the juniors in and, put a bit of powder on them because it's just a vicar coming in to tea, isn't it? So it doesn't need any of that. And suddenly we were making massive demands on budgets, on costume, on design. And suddenly all those people got really excited because, oh my God, yeah, a brick exploding in your mouth and a wrecking ball. Yeah, right, we'll do that. They love visual effects guys love blowing stuff up and throwing people through glass walls. So they were our biggest fans, really.
Can I just say at this moment, for those of you who don't know, our lighting director John Pomfrey passed away last week, and he was very instrumental in organising the look of the show. He brought colour to a rather grey set, and
the first 2 series are quite grey and flat, aren't they, compared to what went on from 3 onwards? And John was a lot to do with that.
He lifted them amazingly.
And I think we have more money. I do think we have more money. Anyway, the fact is, it's fantastic when drama's used to that massive commitment from it. And working at the BBC in those days was just extraordinary because you had this machine. And even though it was an independent production, we used the BBC's machinery. And the design and the visual effects and the costume and everything, of course, that's all gone, all been pissed away. But it was so fantastic to be able to plug into that machine. And again, with Ed, we'd come into contact with them. We both worked on the 2 Ronnies originally, and the 2 Ronnies was the biggest show. So you got the best. Yeah. And then we went to them and said, do you want to do this thing called the Young Ones? Yeah, go on. So And that's all gone now. I mean, I don't know how you pull together that team. That's what worries me about. Not only do they not do comedy anymore, apparently, but they haven't got the people in there to do it anyway. So,
how did you? That cannot be the first show you've ever written. How did you work up to that?
So I was part of a comedy double act, and we used to do live comedy, stand-up comedy, did several shorts as well. So it kind of took me to that period.
well, that was your first big series.
That's your first half hour.
I tell you what, it's a
Amazing.
very assured
That
piece
is
of writing.
Really
for a
impressive.
first.
Well
It's
done.
incredibly
Yeah,
unusual.
absolutely right, yeah.
You've done a ton of stuff. before
Oh
you
yeah,
did.
I think I'd written like 40 episodes on radio, different
Yeah,
sitcoms
yeah,
before I
yeah.
gone. So.
Yeah, so what we would do is we would have 2 days in the studio, and the first day would be recording stuff that would be difficult to do in front of an audience, like special effects stuff, backwards stuff, chroma-key stuff, all that kind of thing. And but when the audience come in, we have to. Normally it's me, sometimes Paul. We'd edit together what we'd done on day one, so that on day two you can play it into the audience. Because the audience need to be able to understand the story, and so they need to see what you've shot beforehand and on location. I mean, I'd love to have had an audience on location just out of shot with them. But so you show them everything, and to be honest, it's the same set of rules. If they laugh at it, great, it's there. If they don't laugh at it, we might well chop it out.
I do
So
remember that
that's how the system works.
Chris Barry was particularly good at pretending there was an audience there, and he always left the right gap for the right laugh. He's a bloody genius.
Yeah,
Co-
that's
Comedians will tell you the reason to have an audience is to time the joke because they don't know otherwise. And I tell you, who are the masters of it were the two Ronnies. Because we did pre-record with them as well. They all, I don't know how they did it. They always left exactly the right gap, and you'd play it in, and the laugh would be fading, and then would come the line. They were geniuses at it.
They just knew the audience. And the time.
They'd done it for
Wow.
so long,
Yeah.
all their lives. They just knew what the gag was worth and what the laugh it would get. But I always want to have an audience because to me it's an honesty. It's your truth machine. If it's not funny, they don't laugh. And I'm afraid there's a lot of comedy going on at the moment without an audience, and it's not funny because there's no jokes in it. So, but an audience tells you that.
Yeah.
You can't get away with it. But there's one big exception. My big mate, Jeff Perkins, who was a much, much better reader and worker of comedy than me, was head of comedy at the BBC when I was there. And Jeff and I sat down with Caroline Aherne when she came in and pitched Royal Family. And Royal Family is, 4 people in a living room. It's classic studio sitcom.
Yeah.
And we had the conversation. We said, we really want to do it. And she said, yeah, I'm going to shoot it on film. And what? Why would you do that? It's got full of jokes. Why would you? And she said, I'm not doing it. But Caroline was very like that. She said, I'm not doing it. And that's the rule. So we wanted it. And we much against Jeff and my absolute belief. And of course, she was absolutely right. I mean, an audience would have ruined it, completely spoiled that very claustrophobic thing that she had. She was totally right. She was a genius, Caroline. Was a
She
genius.
really was, yeah.
And
I think that writers all should, the very first thing they do at least, should be in front of an audience because there's a moment when you write a joke that doesn't hit and you never want to live through that moment ever again. It's the worst thing.
And you want to find out why it didn't hit and then rewrite it so it does. And so
and make it better.
I think
next
doing
time.
comedy without an audience is kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of a nonsense, really.
It's a strange thing that it's disappeared. I mean, what is the reason for audience sitcoms to disappear?
Well,
as opposed to
I was at the BBC when we first started doing what's called Realcon. So we did a thing called Operation Good Guys and people like us with Chris Langham. And then, of course, The Office was the one that really made it. And, of course, all those shows, A, were very funny, and B, the protagonists, Ricky and Stephen, for example, were absolutely right to say it doesn't need an audience. That's not what we're doing. John Morton, who does so many W1A and all those shows now, who wrote People Like Us, they're doing a different thing. But forgive me, I do sound like a very bitter old man. I'm not bitter, I'm just old. But
I think you're a bit bitter too.
no, I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. Take that fucking hat off, Ed, for God's sake. No, I'm not.
I knew I'd get to eventually.
I just think...
time, 4:15.
I just think we've got to a point now where we are commissioning stuff and buying stuff and recording it and putting it on, and nobody's saying, I'm sorry, is there a joke? Is there a joke in that at all? In that, I've just watched that whole half hour, and it's quite interesting. 2 characters talking. Is there a joke in it anywhere at all? And you just couldn't go into a studio, in my opinion, and do some of what passes for half-hour comedy. You couldn't. What would be the point? Yeah. You're not laughing at all. You sit there and think, well, yes, very sweet.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And I just think we're commissioning too much of that stuff at the moment. And then you go into the BBC and they say, yeah, well, we don't do audience sitcom anymore. Well, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Well, we've had a good laugh today. Thanks to you lot. Thank you so much. Thank you, lovely audience.
Yes, thank you.